to conclude. So exciting. Okie dokie. Let's hit it. Last, basically 2 pages. And we thank again Jay Garfield for all the things that passed through him to us. Chapter 10, Getting Over Yourself, drawing this all together. It is now time to draw this all together. We have identified Kanjakirti's serpent, and we have shown that we need not fear it. There is no snake in the wall, there is no self at our core. To believe that we have selves is to succumb to a natural illusion, just as we succumb naturally to optical illusions. We are neither substantial subjects who take the world as object, nor free actors who intervene in an otherwise law-governed natural world. Instead, we are persons, hypersocial organisms embedded in the world, in open causal interaction with our environments and with each other. Complex causal continua who play complex social roles. We have seen that while there is a powerful psychological drive to reification that results in the self-illusion, and while that drive has been sublimated into sophisticated accounts of that self and arguments for its reality, we can resist the pull, both of that drive and of those arguments. Even the best of those arguments establish only our reality as persons, not as selves. And everything that we might have thought could only be accomplished by a self can be handled just fine by persons. But we have established more than that. One might have thought that the discovery that we have no self, no Atman, no psyche, would be the discovery that we are somehow less than we thought we were, that we are diminished in dignity and freedom and moral worth, or that our lives are less worthwhile than they would have been, than they would be were we selves. But we have seen that this is wrong. Just as our homes are safer with no snakes hiding in the walls, our lives are better for the fact that we are selfless persons than they could ever have been were we selves. That is, the self you might have thought you were would only get in the way of leading a flourishing life. Thinking that you have a self does not enhance, but instead impoverishes your life. Okay, impoverishes your life. This is true, we have seen, for several reasons. First, the kind of self-consciousness that arises from thinking of ourselves as self gets in the way of fluid expert performance. And even though we might not all be virtuoso pianists or virtuoso tennis players, we are each capable of being virtuoso friends, virtuoso parents, virtuoso colleagues, or virtuoso citizens, persons who play our respective roles well. We do better at these things when we give up our self-illusion than when we focus on that self. Giving up the self, that is, facilitates spontaneity. Second, to the extent that I think of myself and others as selves, I undermine my ethical life and my ethical engagement with others. The self-illusion distorts our own sense of agency and distorts our attribution of agency to others. It leads us to see ourselves and others as free actors instead of embedded agents, leading to reactive attitudes that fail to reflect reality and that do nobody any good. Oh, you wanted to hurt me. That behavior started with you and is ending with me. No, that behavior started before you, and it's just gonna pass right through me. Which I guess I made 2 separate points. Words are funny. So, to see ourselves as interacting persons allows us to consider the causes and reasons for our own behavior and attitudes as well as those of others, and encourages us to resolve problems rather than to recriminate, to ameliorate situations rather than to punish, and to cultivate attitudes that make everyone more effective and happy. Finally, to see ourselves as persons rather than as selves allows us a richer, more nuanced understanding of who we are, of how we become who we are, and of the importance of our development and social context to our identity. We are not isolated individuals who happen to choose to live together. We are social animals who only become the individuals we do in social contexts that scaffold our flourishing. We can only make sense of our lives and see them as meaningful when we understand our personhood and when we give up the fantasy of independence encoded in the idea of a self. When people first hear about the idea of selflessness, they often find it disturbing. So funny. You know what? Because I want to finish on his words. So I want to say something. I was thinking about Pop Pop, and what's difficult is that I wanted to communicate these things to him. Okay, there was an intention in this set of processes to communicate these things to him, and basically it was for like a couple of years I was trying. And and I'll try again, but I have more work to do, more to understand. It's a lot more of a challenge than I had thought it would be. Um, it just this incredible like resistance, this incredible intolerance of another narrative. So I mean, basically, it was like, I mean, he didn't even read it to like. I mean, he didn't even read the ideas, whatever, to give it a chance. So it might as well have presented him the book, right? I was presenting my own stuff, but presented him this book, and he reads "Losing Ourselves, Learning to Live Without a Self." Of course, I'm a self. And then sends me a bunch of articles, or let's say he sends this author a bunch of articles, um, written by people like Dan Zahavi, Evan Thompson, and so on. And it's just like, damn, bro, gotta be a little more receptive to that. You gotta give it a chance, bro. So it's really frustrating. I have no idea how to get him to give it a chance yet, but that's okay. Part of me is really frustrated. There are other parts of me, and there are parts of me that are okay with it, that are excited for the challenge, that are anticipating the pleasure that will come from years of failing and ultimately succeeding. Years of learning and ultimately applying, having enough knowledge to apply it and get it done. Get her done. We can only make sense of our lives and see them as meaningful when we understand our personhood and when we give up the fantasy of independence encoded in the idea of a self. When people first hear about the idea of selflessness, they often find it disturbing. They think that this is the nihilistic idea that we don't really exist. But that only makes sense if you think that to exist is to be a self. Once we see that the self is illusory, we see that that can't be right. The fact that a dollar is not a piece of paper does not mean that dollars don't exist, and the fact that we are not selves does not mean that we do not exist. Instead, for beings like us, to exist is to be a person, a socially constituted being embedded in a rich and meaningful world. Just as for things like dollars, to exist is to be a unit of currency embedded in an economic system. To deny that we are persons would be to deny that we exist. So the self-illusion, although it seems to confer a greater reality on us than would mere conventional personhood, in fact undermines the very reality that makes us who we are. To accept that you have no self is to reject your identity. To accept that you have no self is not to reject your identity, it is to reclaim your humanity. As Sandy Huntington says, the finer the hair, the more important it is to split it. So here's the plan, gang. there's a part of me. Okay, how do we say this? I haven't really figured out. Sometimes I say summits, like some of my processes, because it's or what I call the different mechanisms. Summits this, summits that. What if I say partai? No, my part. I don't know. Yeah, we really have to invent new language because the I is keeping us limited to this narrative of a self. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Part of me is terrified of this interview of not thinking of the best questions. And so we acknowledge that part that has this expectation of getting it right, that this expectation that there is a way that I must do it to get it right. But really, whatever happens, happens. It's absolutely fine. I'm gonna. So here's the plan. We're done reading this. On Sunday, I don't know what's going on because baby girl is practicing agency and authority, and so is gonna make all the decisions tomorrow. Okay. She's not gonna ask, and can we do this? Do you want to do that? Blah, 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 blah. She's gonna say, now we're doing this, now we're doing that, or however she phrases it. I guess we won't expect it to just be. Anyway, so, and then on Monday, I'm doing nothing with intention. I'm not intending any, tasks, what have you. And then on Tuesday, we're just gonna lock in and try to figure out what we're gonna ask, what our goals are, what we want to, discuss, gain from, show you guys in these meetings. So pretty scary, pretty exciting, and it's just 1 week out of my life. No big deal. Maybe baby won't be deciding the whole day tomorrow because maybe this kind of bad timing because I've got these meetings, so losing a day might not actually be feasible. Because I guess I don't have to organize those files for the interview. I finished the reading. And we can even do affirmation posters another time. No, we'll let baby